Welcome to the Nation ASEAN Plus. I'm Melissa Ong. As the 47th ASEAN Summit takes place here in Kuala Lumpur, today we discuss youth powering ASEAN's green transition. And joining me is Jitsai Santaputra, co-founder, Youth for Energy Southeast Asia, and also consultant at the Lantau Group. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to start from here and begin our conversation with this. Could you briefly share with us what Youth for Energy Southeast Asia is all about and what inspired its formation?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. Now, Youth for Energy Southeast Asia, or I call it Y4E, we're all about youth empowerment and youth capacity building. And we want to enable young people in Southeast Asia to be able to meet and to collaborate with other regions, with youth that work on energy in other regions. So how we started is actually a really funny story. It actually started here in Malaysia. Myself, I am from Bangkok, Thailand, and my co-founder, Amira Bilkis, is from Jakarta, Indonesia. And we met here in Malaysia, and we realized that we don't get to meet other people who are young people working in energy. We always meet outside our countries and outside the region. So it was very rare for us to be able to meet in Malaysia. And we, while discussing this, just like a coffee chat, we realized that that's something we wanted to change. We wanted to build a platform where young people, just like us back in the day, could meet and also to collaborate and plan new ideas and help the energy transition. So that was very much the start of why we started Y4E almost 3 years ago.
Now, that's fantastic. A really great initiative and collaboration between the ASEAN countries as well. Now, the term green transition is often used in regional discussions. From your perspective, what does a green and just energy transition mean for ASEAN, and why is youth engagement so critical in that process?
Yeah, so I think I will break it down first shortly about the just energy transition. So the just energy transition really talks about justice or fairness. And now when we talk about policymakers, talking about governments, talking about young people, the word justice means very different things to different people. In terms of youth engagement, just energy transition really means leaving no one behind, which means that young people, women, people from rural communities, disabilities, that all voices are included and heard in making energy transition policies. Now, just energy transition for policymakers traditionally may mean having energy that is reliable and secure. And we, as young people, we also want those things, but we also want to be meaningfully included in that policy-making process. So for just energy transition, in the bigger picture of green transition, it means young people want to be involved in how we solve climate change, how we solve energy emissions from energy sources.
And how has this whole process been, and have the voices of the youth, have they been heard?
Well, we see that we see progress, meaningful progress. For example, recently at our Southeast Asia Youth Energy Forum, or SAYEF, we had YB Akmal, or the Deputy Minister of Petra, to attend and to listen to the young people's declarations, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But it really speaks to how governments and policymakers are starting to open those pathways for young people to be heard. Now, this is quite a new space. And understandably, for policymakers and government leaders, they're not sure what young people have to say. But that's particularly the point of why we started Y4E, is instead of asking us, do young people care about climate change? Do young people care about energy transitions and energy resources? The question should be, what kind of concerns do you have? And therefore, what kind of solutions do you want to propose? So this untapped opportunity and untapped resource, which are young people, to be part of the energy transition in the form of new jobs, in the form of green jobs, that's a field that we want to see being more included in the discussion about policy making and the solutions for our world.
Now, inclusivity is often mentioned in sustainability conversation, but in practice, what does inclusivity in the green transition look like across ASEAN?
So inclusivity in the green transition, right now, inclusivity looks at three main items, three main players in the picture of policymaking. We have the government, we have academia or experts in the field, and we also have private sector. Now, this is a triangle or a triple helix. We want that to be expanded to civil society and youth being part of that civil society grouping. Now, in sustainability conversations, It's talking about safeguarding not just the economic growth of the countries, which we prioritize as an economy, as an emerging economy, as a region, but it's also about sustainability of the environment and also sustainability of culture and the people's way of life. So that's something that with more civil society engagement in decision making in the green transition, we can have a more holistic view of what solutions we'd want to have and what kind of impacts are going to play out if we have more voices at the table.
And from your experience, what are the main barriers to foster this green transition movement in Southeast Asia? And also, how can voices of youth help to overcome, if any, challenges?
I will say there's two main barriers that I want to point out, and this is just two that I want to pick to showcase. The first one is about opportunities and jobs gap. When we talk about national plans or regional plans, there's a lot of discussion. There's always a number. 100,000 green jobs available. New jobs are coming in the digital economy. All these new jobs that are supposedly becoming available to the younger generation, it's very hard to access. Which means when we talk to younger generations, when we talk to younger people, they'll always say it's so hard to find a job in this economy. Graduating today is a very difficult environment for people to find jobs. But at the same time, there seems to be so many green jobs waiting to be filled. So there's a gap. Either it's a gap of understanding, a gap of skill, a gap of capacity, or a gap of how we search and find jobs in today's age. So that jobs gap is one of the main barriers to the faster green transition. It means a lot of expertise that's available is not being filled. It also means that a lot of the energy systems and energy technologies that are becoming more commercial, like for example, offshore wind. How many offshore wind technology experts do we have in Southeast Asia? I would dare say quite very little, limited numbers of people. So bringing that, closing that jobs gap is one barrier that we can overcome. And the second part is about transparency. Now this is in the sense of data access. What I mean is, as a young person, if you wanted to figure out, you want to do a startup in energy, and you needed to assess energy-related data, they're often unavailable to us because there's no mandate that the government or the generators need to showcase or need to provide access to these data. And sometimes it is about security of the power plant, security of the system, but sometimes it's because there was nobody's ever said that we want access to this information. So I'm here to also say that transparency, not just about data access, but transparency about how the electricity tariffs are made, how we are paying for policy expenses, for example, or how are we subsidizing other energy technologies to come in or to block them from coming into this energy system. All of these things goes back to transparency and access to information. So to summarize that, the two main barriers that I want to pick at today would be the jobs access and the jobs gap, and as well as the transparency and access to data.
But how is it like currently with Youth for E and the development of these two barriers?
Yeah, so with
Have
Y
you
for
bridged
E,
the gap?
we try to bridge the first. Let's talk about the jobs gap, right? So it's about capacity building and about awareness of what type of new jobs are coming online. How we tackle that issue is we have capacity building programs. Now we partner with a lot of local, either local energy companies or local climate youth groups in different countries. We do a lot of work in Indonesia, for example. We've done a few lectures in Thailand, and we've done some in Malaysia as well. But what we're trying to do is for young people to, one, be aware of what type of energies there are available and what does the landscape look like, and then also try to showcase what kind of green jobs are available that would meet the needs of the people who want to address climate change, but address climate change through finding jobs and careers in the energy space. So that jobs gap we're addressing with capacity building programs. In terms of transparency, we do a lot of kind of like university partnerships and lectures where we want to showcase that, okay, if we had data access, if we, like for example, we have data access in Europe, what would those jobs that are built on that type of data look like? For example, what kind of startups can we use to manage EV charging, for example? And how do we manage these things to leverage our digital literacy or our digital economies that we're trying to transition towards?
So it has shown a little bit of progress and is getting there to a more fruitful and productive collaboration between your organization or Youth for Energy and also different type of stakeholders, right?
Yes.
Right. And I understand that I need to go live to my colleague in Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre. Jesse, are you ready to share with us what is happening at the 47th ASEAN Summit? Over to you, Jesse.
Proceedings at the Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre, of course, on the back of the ASEAN Summit. We've seen VIPs, dignitaries and delegates all touch down on Kuala Lumpur soil today. We've just finished a press conference that was held by the Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry of Malaysia, Tengku Datuk Zafrul. Then that just happened after the 26th ASEAN Economic Community Council, or the AECC meeting. And what the minister shared was that Malaysia has completed 17 out of 18 priority economic deliverables for 2025, and the remaining one PED is expected to be completed soon. Now, there's a full report that will be presented to ASEAN leaders at the summit this Sunday for adoption and notation. Also, we've found out and got news, of course, of the Timor-Leste Prime Minister. He's just touched down, and we've managed to speak with Malaysia's ambassador to Timor about the accession of Timor-Leste as a full member of ASEAN in 2025. Now, to really get a grip and to understand the high-stakes meetings that are happening for today, we need to understand Malaysia's long-standing position. Under Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's government, Malaysia has carved out a distinct foreign policy that's fiercely independent, non-aligned and unafraid to speak on behalf of the global south. This assertive diplomacy sets the stage for what's happening right now and for the next few days at KLCC. And this week, Anwar was called the trade and peace whisperer for his subtle art of ASEAN's quiet diplomacy. Now, our cameras aren't allowed beyond a few closed doors in which some important meetings are being held, but we can confirm that a critical closed-door meeting with ASEAN foreign ministers and special envoys that is currently happening, that's focused solely on the ASEAN 5-point consensus for Myanmar. Now, Malaysia alongside Indonesia have been most vocal and the most vocal advocate for a proactive approach. Both nations have pushed for more engagement with all stakeholders, including the shadow unity government and ethnic resistance groups. Now, the outcome to watch for from today's meetings is not just a public declaration or a statement, but the big question is whether Malaysia can broker a unified behind-the-scenes strategy to appoint a new credible ASEAN special envoy with a clear mandate to talk to all parties. And as these discussions continue here today, this is not just about hosting a meeting, it's about testing our own capacity to lead. Can it forge a consensus for Myanmar where others have failed? And can this translate into independence and foreign policies that can be made into tangible economic and security benefits, not just for one country, but for the entire bloc, for the entire region? Well, to answer these questions, we'll be, of course, bringing you more updates, and we look forward to more developments as well that's coming in by the minute as we report to you from KLCC. It's back to you in the studio.
Jessie, and we'll be hearing more from Jessie Chahal throughout the week. She's our person on the ground at the 47th ASEAN Summit. And we continue our conversation, Jitsai. Now, ASEAN countries are at a different stage of their clean energy transition, and from highly industrialized economies to developing nations. How does Youth for Energy Southeast Asia navigate these differences to build perhaps a collective regional approach towards a sustainable and, of course, an inclusive energy future?
Yeah, there's two parts to that then. I think the first part will be we partner with a lot of youth organizations in the region. Now, not just energy specific, but also organizations that deal with climate, that deals with social justice, because we believe that when we talk about energy transition or green transition, it's we either all go together or we don't go at all. So we partner with regional partners such as Society for Renewable Energy in Indonesia, SRE, we partner with Reboot Philippines, Women in Energy in Indonesia as well, just to name a few. And so through our partners, we are able to get a comprehensive view of what young people care about, not just about energy and climate, but as a whole. Like, what does society really want to see those changes? So we have a better understanding based on concrete data and not just something that we assume ourselves that, okay, these are what young people care about when we're going to bring that forward to the regional or the global level. We really do the groundwork, do the research, we do quantitative and qualitative surveys to understand what are the young people's point of views. So that's the first part. Because our region, as you mentioned, our 10, now 11 countries are at very different economic development stages and infrastructure development as well. So those differences must be captured, those nuances must be captured, and that's why we do research that's led by youth for the youth. Now the second part is how we navigate those differences. In person, we hosted Southeast Asia Youth Energy Forum, or SAYEF. We hosted that 2 weeks ago on the 10th to 12th of October in Sunway University in KL. So we brought over young people from all 11 countries in Southeast Asia to really workshop the idea, both from a technical point of view, but also from a policy point of view, of what do young people want to see. And the delegates who attended both are regionally inclusive, a regional representative, as well as gender balance, as well as like a large youth range group, which is from 18 to 30-year-olds. So we've really tried to encapsulate that and kind of distill what kind of call to action that we've captured into what we call a youth declaration, and that really focused on how we can plan concrete steps that we want to see. So it's not just about saying we want renewable energy, but it's really about talking about how do we get those steps? How do we fill those gaps? What gaps can we identify that are big gaps in, say, a regional or a national plan at the moment? And what is the strength of young people, the strength of civil society that can make that transition more inclusive?
And could you share with us some of the outcomes and perhaps the messages from that declaration, and how would you envision ASEAN leaders to respond to it?
Yeah. So about the outcomes, the first and foremost, which was resonated throughout SAYEF during the conference, is the awareness of youth and civil society as active stakeholders. Now, when we say active stakeholders, we want to combat the idea that young people, and in our sense, young people is 18 to 35, and below 18 is called children. So children and youth and civil society. So the people who are not academics, who are not governments, and who are not private sector, the civil society as active stakeholders means that they have agency, they care. First off, they care about climate change, they want to combat it, and they want to be included in constructing the solutions for it. So they're not victims, they're not waiting to be saved, but civil society, especially young people, want to be participating in creating those solutions. There's also formal recognition of the declaration is what we want to see from ASEAN leaders. We want ASEAN leaders to recognize that we have a youth declaration. It is representative of all the regions, all the countries combined, and it is a pathway and policy recommendations that we want to be considered. We're not saying that the governments need to follow our plans, but we are saying that there should be some awareness and some recognition that there are young people who are trying to make this difference. And the last one is we want to see intergenerationally inclusive energy transition plans, which means we would want eventually the government and the ministries to acknowledge and have acknowledged formally in their plans the role of youth stakeholders in those plans.
Now, I also understand that one of the declaration points calls for a more holistic approach to energy policy, moving beyond techno-economic factors to include social and environmental dimensions. So what is this shift important, and how can governments ensure these broader considerations are reflected in both national and regional energy planning moving forward?
Yeah, so why is it important? And the two words are social and environmental. Now, we know that energy transition, which is not an easy thing to solve, we are not saying that young people have the full solution, but we're saying we're part of that. We want to be part of the solution creation. So from the social dimension, as mentioned earlier, it's about job pipeline and job planning. So this green jobs gap that the government likes to talk about and saying maybe young people are not trying to apply for the right jobs. Sometimes I want people to think of it the other way. Put yourselves in that young person's shoes, right? Maybe they're just graduating technical school, they're graduating university, and they're saying, how do I find these green jobs that the government keeps saying is available? So that gap needs to be closed, and that's why the social dimension is important, because if you can close that gap, you have a bigger pool of talent that work better in the digital economy. And we know that young people are more tech savvy, so a lot of more solutions that may not be considered by a older or more elder generation, that will come out. So it'll be a more holistic planning and holistic solution planning. On the environmental side, there's going to be a lot of biodiversity loss as we transition to renewable energy. For example, bio power plants, bioenergy needs a lot of homogeneous types of fuel. And this is a basic explanation of that. But it means that for that to be effective, we need large pieces of land to just grow the same type of crop. Now, this is actually very bad for biodiversity, and that's for the bio power plants. For another example would be hydropower plants or dams. If you build a lot of dams, there's biodiversity loss, but there's also cultural heritage loss. Some villages might be underwater. We might see the destruction of historical landmarks. So these are items that currently in the way that energy policy and energy planning is done primarily within one ministry and not really cross-checked with other ministries. And this is not just a Malaysia or a Thai. This is quite widespread across the world. The lack of cross-checking and siloed type of working is kind of outdated. But what happens is that there's a lot of side effects or impacts that were unforeseen, but it could be foreseen if it was more holistically planned. So that's something we want to see change. So we want to see more work between the ministries when we are making these plans, and we want to see more attention to how we market these green jobs for young people to find or young people to see the pathway towards those specific jobs.
Okay, finally, what is your message to ASEAN youth, who, especially those who want to play a more critical role to shaping a greener and more inclusive future, but feel that their voices are too small or does not matter? Your advice?
Yeah, I think the first advice would be, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Now, what that means is before you start something, for example, when we started Youth for Energy Southeast Asia, we also had a review of what is out there, what is existing now, and we don't want to copy and try to make it better, but we want to be able to create an organization that is a network that allows these organizations to flourish faster, to find funding better, and we want to be kind of like a convener in the middle. So we are trying to bring whatever's happening in Southeast Asia to the global stage and become an amplifier of the voices. So the idea is it's never too small to start something. It's never too late to start something. So sometimes it just starts from an idea of like a coffee chat, how Amira and myself started Y4E. But then we can grow it into, a multi-day regional conference, SAIEF, after 3 years. So the possibilities are endless, and we're not experts ourselves. We are also trying to figure it out. But my word to the young people listening who may be thinking that they want to start something that addresses a problem that they have, whatever that may be, to sit down, brainstorm it, and just launch it. And then just see how it goes. If you have the passion, you have the drive to make it happen, you'll figure out the ways, and you'll be surprised how many people want to help encourage you and open those doors for you to find those opportunities.
Right, and you have been to many youth conferences as well. How is your responses towards this shaping greener futures?
The response has been overwhelmingly great. So many people have come to me and say, wow, I wish this existed 10 years ago, 20 years ago when I started my career. And my answer would be, it's never too late for you to help us. Help the younger generation open those doors, whether it be funding, whether it be opportunities to be on TV, to talk about our initiatives. There's always a way that somebody can offer help, and it doesn't always have to be offering funding. So raising awareness, sharing our Instagram posts, like raising awareness of what we're trying to do really helps us already reach more young people. There's a lot of people, we're running a mentorship program right now in Y4E. We had over 300 applications for a limited number of spots. That number purely demonstrates how many young people actually care and want mentorship, which means they want to find that career path to address climate change, to be part of the energy transition. So with that, I want everybody listening to kind of, encourage their young people around them if they have new ideas, to just be kind to them, but give critical feedback. give feedback that will help them improve and to unblock barriers, and whatever you can help open. I always like to use the word like opening doors or opportunities for other people. Sometimes you think it's a small gesture, but for that young person, sometimes that 5 minutes discussion or advice is the difference between them finding the right path, career path, and them, finding something else. So it makes a world of difference. So we're trying to make that difference through SAIEF, through our mentorship program, and through work with our partners.
Well, on that note, thank you, Jitsai. Really inspiring to hear youth rise up and create impact for your generation and future generations. That's all the time we have on the Nation ASEAN Plus. Thank you for joining us, and Jitsai as well, the co-founder of Youth for Energy Southeast Asia and consultant at the Lantau Group. For more updates on ASEAN developments, visit the ASEAN page on BERNAMA.com and of course BERNAMA TV for the latest on what's happening at the summit. I'm Liz Ong. This has been the Nation ASEAN Plus. Thanks for watching.